Well, good morning. I'm Pastor Lonny from Hebo Christian Center, which is located in beautiful downtown Hebo, and you should try and visit sometime if you haven't been here for a while. But like us, you know, we are definitely living in a very interesting time. And I don't know about you, but my wife and I tried going to the store the other day, and going to a store is totally different because not only so many people can go into a store at a time, and everybody lines up outside, and you're 6 feet apart, you know. So, and not only are you 6 feet apart, but at least some people are wearing a mask today. And I heard one person put it like this, that never in his wildest dreams did he ever think that he'd be able to walk into a bank wearing a mask and ask for money, and that was perfectly all right with the teller. You know, it's just, times have really changed. And I would say there isn't anything that is really normal anymore. And in light of that, I have a parishioner sent me this little story this week, and so I'm going to share that with you because it's really cute. Anyway, just letting you know how times have changed. But there was this little lady, and she went to the post office to buy some stamps. And so she goes in there and she asks the clerk for 100 stamps. And the clerk, you know, sitting there, the clerk asked her, "So what denomination would you like those to be?" And the little lady goes, "Oh my goodness, it's come to that now?" It's like, okay, give me 50 Baptists and 50 Catholics. Times have definitely changed, you know. Now, things are changing around the church here, even though some people haven't been attending, like most of them haven't been attending, so you don't know the changes that are taking place. Well, for one thing, we have a new ductless heating system, which is in the back of the church here, and it's awesome because we needed a new heating system, so figure we might as well get that done while everything else is kind of closed up. And then our church sign. Well, our church sign is getting a facelift. It's been sanded down, and most of it's been painted. The little touch-up paint on the to do yet, and we're going to have a fresh-looking sign out there. On the east side of the church, we finished with the facial board, getting that. We got that up. And the reason for that is we're getting that ready for the gutters, because we need gutters there, because underneath the gutters we're looking to do some landscaping there and put up some picnic tables there, and we don't want water dripping on people's heads there. We want to do a different type of baptism other than that, so we're getting that ready for that. And then this week 2 more pews are gone from the church, and which some people are rather sad about. Well, you know what? Times are changing, and we need to kind of change with them, upgrade a little bit. And now about the pews that left, they are going to a very good home, and the plan is to use them for ministry to young people, young adults. So they're still going to be used for ministry. So those of you who are upset that I'm getting rid of the pews, taking them out of the church, well, now you get to practice walking in forgiveness and forgiving me for all that. As far as the church and how are we going to operate, we're still trying to figure that out, you know, because this is definitely a curveball that's been thrown to us, and scrambling and really trying to figure things out. Are we going to be operating differently in the future? I really think we're going to. If we don't operate differently in the future than what we are now, I really believe we're missing the will of God and what He is looking to do. He's looking to cause change. in the church, in the lives of the people. We have to do it differently than what we did in the past. Now, you can look at other churches and go, oh, look what they're doing, and try to copy them. Well, from experience, I found out that that doesn't work. What you have to figure out is, how does God want to use your church? Understand that and go with that. All churches aren't used the same. Some are fantastic at discipleship. Some are fantastic at salvations. Some are fantastic at children's ministries. Okay? We don't all have to reinvent the wheel. Just find out how God wants to use your church and go with that. Because one of the reasons for that, and I'll bring in a larger picture, in that we can't really do much to affect what is happening around the world. What we can change and what we can affect is right where we live, right where we are at, the people that are surrounding us. People that live here, we can do something about. We can do something about this beautiful valley that we live in, that God has blessed us. And those of you who don't live here, sorry, you know, we got the number one piece of property. You know, this is God's turf here. This is a beautiful valley, and we get to live in it. Now, one of the things about being a preacher is I get to practice what I preach. Now, I'll tell you about that, and I'll, right after a story that I get to share with you. There is a pastor's wife who is a lot like Crystal in some ways, in that she would ask her husband, okay, so what are you preaching on Sunday? Now, I tell Crystal, Jesus. And that's it. It doesn't help her out very much. Well, the reason why this wife liked to know the message that her husband was going to give on Sunday is so that she would know what kind of a battle they're going to be in the coming week. She just wanted to be ready for it instead of being taken by surprise. Okay? Now, I'll tell you how that works. Last week's message was on tithing. And the offerings for this month, well, kind of difficult because people aren't coming to church. So how are you going to receive tithes and offerings? Well, we're doing it by snail mail, and stuff like that. And so the finances really aren't coming in all that well. Well, I like to know what the finances are like in the church. Why? Because I don't want to overspend. You overspend, then the church is in the red. Churches shouldn't operate in the red. That's not a good place to be. So, know what the finances are so you don't overspend. A number of years ago, God gave me a promise. And the promise was, and still is, that when you need the finances, they will be there. Okay. I have taken that and lived with it for years. And part of the reason for that is because after the Lord gave me that promise, He backed it up. He likes to do that, because I need that. But He had somebody take and slide some money under the front door of the church. So when I opened up the front door of the church, there was money right there. And it was right after He gave me the promise. It was like, okay, God, gotcha, So I did hear correctly, and He backed it up, and He proved it. Now, how did that play out recently with all, preaching on tithes and all that stuff? Well, I was putting a fresh coat of oil on the church sign, and the Lord had a person who doesn't even go to this church stop and give me some money for the church. And it was just his way of reminding me of the promise that he had given me years ago, and basically he's letting me know he has us covered. Now, not only does God want to cover this church, he wants to cover this community, and he wants to cover this whole big, beautiful valley that we get to live in. Now, how is that going to happen? Well, God has been resetting people's lives all the way through history, and he's doing it again today. And so where we're at in our studies and stuff is looking at Malachi. Well, Malachi was addressing the people of that day, trying to get them to reset. Now, what we just addressed last week was Malachi chapter 3, verses 8 through 10, which is addressing tithing. Well, when we look at tithing, we always think of money. And you go, why? Well, I'm going to submit this to you. I think that money has become the main focal point in every culture. That being the case, the one who controls the money in the world really controls what happens in the world, because governments cannot operate without money. In that whoever controls the purse strings can actually control governments. Okay? So, is money important to people? Yep. God needs to know that he is more important to us than money. So what does he say? Tithe. Just give him a portion of it. Okay? Give it back to him, what is so precious to us. Now, that's tithing number 1. Now I'm going to address tithing number 2. The next area, which seems to be very important, is time. Why is that? Well, because when you look at the instructions, God instructs us to remember the Sabbath day. Take one day out of the week, rest, and spend that day with him. So my question then is, how are you spending your time? How are you using it? Are you tithing of your time to God? Be wise to do that. Now, I just threw those things out there for you so that you can do what? But get the brain cells going, evaluate your life, and think about it, and see what changes you need to make in your life to improve in those areas. So now, let us look at the promise God has for us when we are in a right relationship with him. See, when people are away from the Lord, even people who think they are okay in their relationship with the Lord, when they go through a reset motion and which causes change, then we come to what can happen. Malachi chapter 3, verse 11, promise of God. Then I will rebuke the devourer for you, so that it will not destroy the fruits of the ground, nor will your vine in the field cast its grapes, says the Lord of hosts. So God's promise to his people, when we are lined up correctly, he will rebuke the devourer. It's like, awesome! So who's the devourer? Well, our first thought is the one that we always like to point the finger at, is Satan. Okay? A devourer, all right? My question, why do we blame Satan when we are responsible for our own relationship with God? Let's look at ourselves and our conduct. Now, there's 3 areas that we can have issues with. 1 John chapter 2, verse 16 reads, For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the boastful pride of life is not from the Father, but is from the world. All right? Now, what we need to touch on next going into here, because those 3 areas is something that we have to deal with. Now, that has an effect where we live. So now I need to touch on something that I call land theology. Now, a number of years ago, Crystal and I were involved with research in the history of Tillamook County. And when you understand what has happened in the past, then you will understand what is happening in the present and where the future is heading. Okay? Putting it in another way. Bottom line stuff, maybe plainer English, whatever. The sins of the past will affect the present and the future. And corporate sin is even worse and does more damage to the land. But what I mean by corporate sin is when a community is just, that's the way the community operates. Corporate sin. It just adds to defiling the land. Now there are 4 areas that defile the land. One is innocent bloodshed. Now are we guilty of innocent bloodshed? And it's like, who, us? No, we're not guilty of innocent bloodshed. I haven't killed anybody lately. Really? How about abortion? Is abortion legal in our culture? Yeah. You want an abortion? You can go in. Yeah, the doctor will gladly take your money and abort your baby. That's innocent bloodshed. And what we have done in the past, what we've done in the past affects the present, okay? What we have essentially done by aborting babies is we have killed off an entire workforce. Those that would be out there working, that would hold down a job, okay? Now what are we dealing today? We have this whole immigration issue. We wouldn't have a problem with immigration if we didn't have jobs. They're coming looking for a job. We have them. Why? Because we killed off a whole generation of people that would have been our workforce. Big issues. And by the way, I believe we're really going to pay big time sometime, if not now, even more so in the future, for all abortions that have taken place. The second way that land is defiled, and that is broken covenants. Now, the major one here is what? No-fault divorce. Oh, yeah, what does that do? Well, you have a breakdown of the family structure. When you have a breakdown of the family structure, you have more dysfunctional families. Oh my, isn't that wonderful? Men don't know how to be men. Women don't know how to be women. Why? Because that is something that the children learn from their father and their mother, how to conduct themselves. Well, with all the broken homes and all the dysfunctional stuff, that just continues to spread because of a revolving door. All right? Broken covenants. Number 3 is idolatry. All right? Making something more important than God in one's life. Simple explanation. Well, I decided to look up what the word actually means one time, and it was kind of comical when you finally come to understand what idolatry really means. The word itself, it means good for nothing. That's it. It's good for nothing. That's idolatry. That's the meaning of the word. It's like, oh, okay, well, you put something, if something in your life is more important than God, guess what? It's good for nothing. Okay? Now, number 4 is immorality. And this is more than just one's improper sex life, all right? And in touching on this, I'm probably going to offend somebody. Well, too bad. Because I'm going to put it simply like this. The only proper sex life is between one man and one woman who are married to each other. That's simple. That's it. Anything else is wrong. And you go, well, that's awful narrow-minded of you and all that stuff there. Well, you know what? I didn't write the Bible. I do read it, and I do study it. If you don't like what the Bible says, take it up with the author. Okay? So, I'm going to add this to improper sex, though. I'm going to include lying, stealing, drunkenness, and we'll just throw this in there for good measure, just being lazy. Okay? All messes up the area. All brings defilement to the land. Now, when you do the research and you find out what are the sins that are prevalent in the area where you live, then you will know what needs to be repented of. You go, well, I don't need to repent for that because I didn't do it. Well, when does God forgive sin? He forgives sin when it is repented of and people stop sinning. Then he forgives. The land is defiled by the sin that has taken place. So whoever lives on that sin, or whoever lives on that land in the future, if you want a productive piece of turf to live on, you're going to need to repent for the sin that has taken place on that land so that God can forgive it and heal the land. Which brings us to 2 Chronicles. We'll get it here yet. 2 Chronicles 7:14, and it reads, "And my people who are called by my name humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, will forgive their sin, and will heal their land." We read scriptures like 2 Chronicles 7:14 about God healing the land. We read scriptures like Malachi 3:11 where God promises to rebuke the devourer. What does that all look like? Well, George Otis Jr. done some research on what happens when God heals the land. In Almalanga, which is kind of my favorite one, and is what he's researched out, Almalanga, Guatemala, which is a community of 19,000 people. Well, before God started really transforming the community, that community had 36 bars. That's where you go to drink, okay, and not just water. Well, they had 36 bars. Well, after God started moving in the community and the lives were being transformed, well, that went down to 3. And when the drinking stopped, guess what? So did the violence. And, well, if there isn't violence, there isn't crime being committed, what happens to your police department? It gets reduced. And at one time, they had 4 jails in the community. After 20 years, all the jails were closed up because they didn't need them anymore. What about the land? The land became so fertile that where they used to have, well, what's happening is that they have 3 harvests a year now. And when you look at some of their harvests, they had carrots that were as big as your forearm, you know? You could hold up a carrot, and it's as big as your arm. And radishes, they could grow a radish now in 20 days, ready for market. Where they used to produce 4 truckloads of produce a month, after transformation, they are now doing 40 truckloads a week. From 4 a month to 40 a week? What do you think? You think the land is healed? It sure does look like it. Now, one of the interesting things to me when we were looking at the history of Tillamook County, I found that in the 1920s, this county was advertised as a land flowing with milk and honey. Well, dairy farms have been declining over the years. It was basically about 65 years ago. There were about 450 dairy farms. Now, to be truthful and all that, a lot of those dairy farms only had 10 cows. So it's, you know, it wasn't a big operation. Well, when my wife was growing up here, those farms that had decreased to where there was 210. Today in this county, in Tillamook County, we only have 80 farms left, 80 dairy farms left in the county. And where it comes to honey, well, when you talk to people who have lived here for a while, everybody had beehives. Everybody, you know? And so not only was the county known for its milk, it was also known for its honey production. Over the last few years here, Anna and I have learned two things about bees. First of all, because she's raised bees, she's kind of into that. She kind of lets me mess around with it more because it's fascinating. The bees are just incredible little creatures. Okay, thank you, Lord. They're awesome. We've learned two things. One, the honey that they produce in this county, it is incredible. You will never find better honey than what is produced in this county. It is really good, you know? And now the second thing that we have found out, it's really difficult to keep those little girls alive. They just die, okay? It's a rough time trying to keep them going. But she still has a few hives, so we're gonna have some honey again this fall. But honey and milk are not the only things that this county was known for, people earning a living. We have the timber industry, and there were mills just all throughout the county. And now, what I can recall is that they're only down to one mill in this county, and due to COVID-19, I believe that one's even closed down. They're not doing much there either. And then there was the fishing. Fishing was a big industry in Tillamook County. And when you drive by some of the rivers that we have here, especially when you get more towards the ocean and stuff, the mouth of the rivers, you look in the river and there's the pilings that are still there because there was cannery after cannery after cannery along the coastline here. We don't have a single one here. Not anymore. So, things have changed over the years. Now, at one time, up until the late 80s, we had an Air Force base which was on top of Mount Hebo, which was absolutely awesome because what happened with all those airmen, well, they came down and, you know, spent time in the community. We used to have multiple grocery stores in the community and multiple gas stations in the community. Well, today we don't have a single gas station. The closest gas station to this community is 5 miles down the road. And as far as a grocery store, we have one little grocery store, so if you need just one item, you go down to the little grocery store and you get the one item. Because it costs more, but you don't have to drive to Tillamook or Lincoln City to get it. So, we have one little grocery store. Now, I'm going to submit this to you. God is looking to change all that. He's looking to change that. And the way he's going to change that is by resetting the people that live here, that so that he can bring transformation to this community. So the bottom line here is, are you willing to be a part of what God is looking to do throughout this valley? Are you? It's going to take being totally sold out to Him. Are you there? That's the challenge. So let's pray. Lord, we thank you for this awesome day that you have made, and Lord, you have blessed us with an incredible time where we can be on the front row seats and we can see the changes that you are going to cause to happen, and that people are going to be touched, they're going to be transformed, their lives are going to be changed, and then this area is just going to be a haven for people who are going to want to develop a deeper relationship with you, that they can come here, they'll meet with you, and what they receive here, they'll be able to take home, and it'll just continue to spread throughout the county, throughout Oregon, throughout the United States, and around the world. Lord, use us for your glory, and we thank you in Jesus' name.